Started. We've got another dragon. Nice. My two favorites. So far, we've got 3 creatures represented. And again, if you just hopped on, we're just taking a minute to get comfortable. We'll get started in a minute, and it'd be great to introduce yourself and your favorite mythical animal. And Mike, that's very funny. Your wife is your favorite. Liger, that's a good one. Very Napoleon Dynamite, I think. Well, awesome. Let's keep them rolling, but let's get started. Since, as many of you know, these monthly webinars, we keep them tight. We keep them an hour, since especially now that we're in summer, we want to go and enjoy our lovely evenings outside. But we're so glad that you're all here together. So let's just jump on in. So what are we going to do tonight for our hour? We are going to do our welcome and grounding, as we always do. And then we're really going to dive into our topic of how deep conversations drive democracy, and how we as people of faith and spirituality can engage voters and build community in this really, really critical election year. So super glad that you're on to be part of this conversation. So we're really going to be talking about why engaging in the 2022 election matters, and then also some opportunities for you and your faith community to increase voter turnout this year. And it's really going to be a chance to kind of explore these options, think through them, because they're in progress. And so I would love, as hopefully you know, these are opportunities to connect, share ideas. So throughout our evening together, if you have questions or concerns or ideas, please share them in the chat. Please come off mute. We're excited to learn together. We'll have time for Q&A, and then we will talk about next steps in closing. But before we do any of that, I'm going to start us in a land acknowledgement. So I invite you all to close your eyes or to lower your gaze. And we're just going to take a few minutes to reflect on both the land that we're on, and also just kind of this place that we seem to physically be in together as a country and as a world. So everybody, I invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze and take a deep breath in together. Feel your feet on the ground wherever you are, whether it's carpet or maybe you're outside. And we're going to take a few moments to acknowledge the land we're on. So wherever you may be, let us acknowledge that we're all on Indigenous land. Minnesota is located on the traditional and the contemporary homelands of the Anishinaabe and the Dakota peoples, the original stewards of this territory. We acknowledge the trauma that is deeply embedded in the foundation of this country, and how the land that we reside on came under control of the United States through genocide, slavery, and ongoing occupation. And we recognize the deep historical, spiritual, and personal trauma that's impacted Indigenous communities, communities of color, immigrant, and other communities. And by offering this acknowledgement of trauma, we affirm the right of people to bring their whole selves and their stories into this space. And we affirm our intention to promote healing, respect, and love. And I also want to take a moment not only to reflect on the land that we're on and the history that we're part of, but also just our present moment and how full of pain, grief, violence, and really a lot of despair that we're in, especially as we're still reeling from the school shooting in Texas a few weeks ago, and the incredible barrage of mass shootings in the past few days since then. So I just invite you again to feel your feet on the ground, close your eyes if you want, and take another breath as we just reflect on and feel the pain in the world all around us. So I hope you know you're all invited to bring whatever emotions you're carrying into this space, and we're just so glad to be here together as we do the work to build a better world. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen really quick. Because as we like to do in these monthly webinars, is we just like to reground folks, especially if this is your first monthly community connector webinar. You know, what is this all about? So again, at MNIPL, we're all about building the interfaith climate justice movement, because really we think people of faith and spirituality, and again, maybe you're not part of a faith or spiritual community, that's totally fine. but we're all part of communities in some way. And we all have, especially people of faith and spirituality, a really big voice for decision makers. We have pre-existing communities that can take action together. And all of our religions, traditions, and spiritualities teach us to care for each other, for our common home. And so there's so much power in tapping into those teachings and these deepest values. And community connectors are really the linchpin of this work, because again, everybody's part of a community, whether it's a book club or your church or a mosque or something else. And so we're really interested in building this movement by helping community connectors better, connect whatever their community is with MNIPL and the climate movement. And so really, you're just a liaison between MNIPL and your community. And now we've hit 250 official community connectors, which is awesome. But if you are not one and you're on this call, that's awesome too. This is a way for us to connect folks across the state and even the country, because I see there are folks from Washington and Pennsylvania here. But if you would like to be a community connector, or you're not sure if you are one, I'm just going to throw this in the chat. It's just an interest form. There's really no big responsibility or anything you have to do. It's just saying like, hey, I'd like to be a liaison between my community and MNIPL. And if you fill out that form, you'll get an email from an MNIPL organizer. It'll be a chance to connect. You'll get invitations to these webinars. You'll also get a monthly action alert specifically for community connectors, and you'll get support and coaching from MNIPL staff if that would be helpful for you. But really, let's jump into why we're all here, right? That's kind of our grounding part. So I really want to do kind of a fun poll. And so we're going to use something called Poll Everywhere a couple times tonight. And we've done it before, so maybe some of you're not scared, but if you're nervous about, I don't know, going to a different website, don't worry. We're going to go to this website and answer the question, what issues matter most to you as you think about the 2022 election? So in a minute, I'm going to, actually, I just did it, put in the chat a link to polleverywhere.com. And you're going to click on that link, or if it's easier, you're going to take out your handy phone and you're going to text Sturdy Moon 443, I know it's weird, to the number on the screen, 37607. And then what's going to happen, I'm just going to show you, is you're going to pop up here and there's going to be this lovely word cloud very soon. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to have a chance to start populating this word cloud. And if you want to write multiple words, you just have to put a period in between. Does that make sense? So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop screen sharing. We're just going to take a second to think, what issues matter most to you as you think about this upcoming election? And of course, if you have questions, feel free to come off mute. See, a couple folks have filled it out, or one person has so far. Awesome. I see democracy. We'll see as other things keep rolling in. I'm going to fill it out, actually. But I'm going to do it on my phone. And it looks like it's getting filled in, which is awesome. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see what's starting to pop up. Anybody see some things that are repeating, or what do you observe? I see a lot on climate, which is not surprising. That's why, we're here. But what else do you see? And I should say, with a word cloud, if something's repeated more than once, it gets bigger. So the things that are bigger are what a lot of people are saying. Anything else you notice? I notice people are saying like gun violence, but in different ways, you know, like gun or, oh, where'd it go? Or gun violence. I see a lot on democracy, being able to even vote, right? Safety, police, housing. Oh, I see extinction. Wow, yeah. Let's see. Brutality. Okay, so as you can see, our word cloud, as it's kind of getting shaped, there's a lot at stake for us this election, right? Anybody, maybe you couldn't get on to this word cloud. If you want to come off mute and share what you were going to say, that's fine too. I'll leave this up for just one more second. All right, great. Well, hopefully you can kind of sit in all of those things that we put on that word cloud. There's a lot. And for me, when I think about, you know, why get involved in elections, I actually worked in an election in 2018, and it was really tiring. And so for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, another election. We just had 2020. Like, why do we have another one? But this quote from Dr. Brenda Salter McNeil, who is a pastor and a professor, said, "I'm calling for people of faith to stand for love, justice, and equality. This means more than sharing a hashtag or praying about it. It means literally changing the laws of our land and electing leaders who will restore the democracy and the liberty that we say we believe in." So with that in mind, MNIPL, just a quick background, we hadn't done a lot in elections previous to the 2020 election. We did a little bit, but 2020, we're pretty proud. We did a lot. 150 plus volunteers were trained to have really meaningful conversations with friends and family who might need, you know, reminders or encouragement to vote. Maybe they're new voters or unlikely to vote. And as we're going to see in a little bit, those are the most powerful voting conversations you can have as a trusted messenger. We also text banked. Again, this was all in a pandemic, so we were trying different things and also trying to engage people of faith in the election for the first time. But we text banked to thousands of unlikely faith voters. And also about 10 faith communities hosted Vote Your Values conversations, again, on Zoom, because we were doing that, as a chance for the congregation to really think about, in a nonpartisan way, you know, why do we vote? Why does this matter? And you can also see some fun photos. A bunch of congregations also hosted Chalk the Vote events. Actually, some small groups did it as well, and even families. Again, just a really fun way to get out in the community, spread a positive voting message. And actually, maybe I'm going to stop screen sharing. Raise your hand if you want, or maybe give a thumbs up if you somehow took action in the 2020 election. Okay, lots of thumbs up. That's awesome. Yay. And I know some of you actually did it with MNIPL. So, oops, I don't think I shared my screen correctly. And we're so proud of everything that happened in that election for people of faith to really, you know, like the quote said, to live out what we believe. And this year, I know you're probably tired of hearing, like I hear, you know, this election is the most important one of our lifetimes. But in 2022, this is a midterm election, but for the first time in 20 years, we have the Minnesota governor's seat. We have every single state Senate seat, which is 67. We have all, you know, state representative seats up for election, as well as a bunch of other seats that are really important, like Secretary of State, our US House of Representative seats, and more. And we know that the results of this election are going to determine not only climate policy in Minnesota, but gun violence, women's rights, racial justice, election integrity, you know, whether we have a functioning democracy and more. So the stakes are really, really high. However, we have another quiz that we're going to try and pull everywhere, because voting turnout in midterms doesn't always reflect the urgency of our moment. So I'm just kind of curious how we're going to do on this little quiz. So again, I'm going to deactivate our lovely little word cloud. And we're going to go see what you all think about this question. So what percentage of eligible voters in Minnesota voted in the 2020 presidential election? We're just going to do this really fast. So once again, you're going to go to the same poll everywhere link, or you're going to, text again. And then you're just going to click on this screen from 0 to 100. What percentage of Minnesotans voted in the 2020 presidential election? And actually, sorry, I don't think this will work if you texted. Sorry about that. But hopefully you can kind of see people are voting. And I'll just give it a couple more seconds for folks to share their ideas. We've got everywhere from 87% to 35% of eligible voters. Okay, you ready for the response or for the answer? I will give 3, 2, 1. It was 79 right here. Ding, ding, ding. If you want to give a little applause or, wavy hands for the 80, this person definitely won. Who said 80? If you want to come off mute or just put in the chat. Or if you don't want to, that's fine. I'll keep checking the chat.
It's Jackie. I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks for Jackie. Okay, well now, what percentage of eligible voters voted in the 2018 midterm elections? Remember, in 2020, 79%. That was actually the highest voter turnout in the entire country here in Minnesota. So yay for that.
I think we're at about, get down, will you please?
Oh yeah, and if you can't access poll everywhere, you can also just shout it out. That's totally fine. I know some people can't get to the link.
I don't know, maybe, I'm thinking 60, well, it was more than that.
Oh, and Jackie, you are off mute, which is totally fine.
Apologize for that.
All right, I'll give 3 more seconds.
44%. I can't vote.
Oh,
it's
okay.
not working for me.
44 right here. The answer is 64. Woo! So who was 65? Who was our winner this time? Oh, very nice. Good work. So a clear drop off, right? 79 to 65. But now we have a final question. What percentage of eligible voters voted in the 2014 midterm elections? So this is prior to 2016, prior to Donald Trump, prior to everything. What percentage of people who could vote voted then? We've got 35. I'll give a few more seconds for, wow, someone thought 85. That would be amazing. It's not that high. I will just spoil. Wow, thank you, Robert. Yes, Pennsylvania never has more than 40%. That shows a big challenge for maybe, again, as we're learning together, maybe there are ways this summer and fall for us to partner with other states and help them maybe remind people to vote. But I'll just give 3 more seconds. And the answer is 50%. So someone was actually right. Who did it? Again, if you don't want to say, it's fine. But I'm impressed that someone got it. So as you can see, there was a clear downward trajectory, right? Each year in 2014, only half of people who could vote did, probably because maybe they forgot or they just, I don't know, didn't really think it was important at that point. So there's always a big difference in the presidential year compared to midterms, right? And that's where we find ourselves now in this time when we know so much is at stake. So we know, as people of faith, we have a big responsibility in this time, even in a state where a lot of people vote, to make sure that people remember to vote this year. So we're going to talk about some of the ways that we're encouraging you, or hopefully they spark ideas for you in your own community this summer and fall. But first, I'm just kind of curious, is your congregation already talking about this year's election? Are there maybe in your green team or anything like that? Are people planning to do anything about it? I'm just kind of curious. So I'll stop sharing just for a minute and would love to hear if you want to come off mute. And again, if you don't want to, you could put in the chat totally fine. I'll say my church, I go to First Covenant Church, St. Paul. I don't think we've talked about it yet at all, which I think a lot of people are at. Ooh,
I could go next.
Oh yeah, Judy.
I go to St. Luke Presbyterian in Minnetonka, and we started a program called Vote Your Values. So we've been having different value groups like climate, of course, and then things like affordable housing, anti-racism kinds of issues. Doing something each month, and then in the fall, we really want to get a push to get people to go to the polls.
That's awesome. Thank you, Judy. And I see Priscilla, you're at Unity. So Unity is setting up a Get Out the Vote team. Any other things you want to add about that? Or are you kind of thinking about what you want to do?
We're just getting started on how we want to proceed. Yeah. So
That's
just the beginnings.
Any other folks? Maybe, oh, Nancy, in 2 weeks, I'm preaching at my home church. So you're reminding me of what I can do is call attention to voting. Totally. And that's something we're going to hear in a little bit of just, again, just how important our voices are, getting clergy's voices involved. There's so many ways to spread this message. Any other people want to share? How about this? If you have not really thought about getting out the vote or anything like that, maybe give a thumbs up. That's totally fine too. I'm kind of here. Yeah, nothing planned so far, Jackie. Yeah, and that totally makes sense. I mean, I feel like we've been in winter this whole time and I'm like, how is it June? This year is very, very strange. And especially for people not in Minnesota, it's been very cold. Well, our goal at MNIPL this year is conversations. That's kind of the key word of our voter outreach work. Oh, I see someone else put in the chat. Yeah, we stay away from political action. And that might be something that a lot of people are resonating with as well. Like, I don't actually feel comfortable bringing up the election at all. And we're going to get into that in a little bit, because I think, that's really, really critical and something to wrestle with. So our goal is to have meaningful, nonpartisan, they can be, they're political, right? Because they're about voting, but they're not partisan conversations with our communities about voting and our values this summer and fall, with the goal to increase voter turnout, not telling people who to vote for, what party, what candidate, whatever, but just to say voting is a critical way to live out our values. And there are 3 ways that we're going to be encouraging and supporting congregations and people to do that. First, knocking on someone's door. Don't freak out. Some people are like, oh my gosh, I hate that. That's totally fine. The other way is showing up in a public space like tabling. And the third, talking with people people who trust you. And for all of these options, we're going to be providing resources, trainings, all the support you need. So I'm going to just kind of go over all of these, what we're thinking right now. And if you have questions, please, jump in. This is, again, is a conversation. I'm just going to kind of share what we're thinking and would love to get reactions and feedback. But again, the point of this is really to be building community, building connections across divides, and not just, trying to get someone to vote for your candidate quickly and having the conversation end. So the first one is just showing up in a public space. You can see from this photo this is actually from the University of North Carolina. They had a lovely table for students. It's actually just going out to where people are. So maybe 2 to 4 people from your congregation or your community, maybe it's just one person, who knows? But what? Just set up a table in a public location. And what can happen at that table is really critical things. Registering people to vote. But not just that, reminding people to check their registration. I had moved before the previous election and I forgot that my voter registration was not up to date. So it was kind of a big hassle. So even if people think, oh, I'm registered, I'm fine, making sure that they check, right? Or maybe they changed their name. Helping people sign up for an absentee ballot so they can just get the ballot in the mail. Very easy. Maybe people are like, I know where to vote, I'm good, but maybe they don't know who's on their ballot. So helping show them like, hey, you can actually see who's on your ballot and research them ahead of time. You can answer questions about voting and really just remind people that there's a really important election coming up and that voting matters. So this is just a chance to get out there and not only, again, register voters, but just remind people that there's an election. Because again, people don't vote in midterm elections because they forget. And where could this happen? Maybe a grocery store near your faith community, maybe a high school in your community, or, a train stop or a farmer's market, like really any place where people are at. And when should this happen? I mean, literally anytime before election day, right? Probably ideally sometime warm. So it could be a nice thing to do in the summer, maybe in an afternoon, could be after a worship gathering or beforehand, depending. It's really, really flexible. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that people usually need about 7 touches or reminders to vote. So say someone is 18, their family doesn't vote, they don't really know there's an election. Maybe they see a sign when they're at college. That's one touch, right? Maybe they talk to someone at a tabling event and they're kind of curious. Maybe a friend texts them about it. Like they need multiple touches to actually see like, oh, this is worth my time. This is important. So I'll pause there. Any questions on just tabling? It seems pretty obvious, but good to check in. Okay, so next one, door knocking. This is instead of, being in a public space, this is literally going to where people are. And this is something that really couldn't happen a lot in 2020 when we didn't have vaccines and we weren't really sure what was going on with the pandemic. But now, especially when it's warmer and people can mask, this is something that we're excited to really try out. So what door knocking would be is, again, a group of volunteers from your faith community, really the more the merrier, but 5 to 10 maybe, would then walk around the community, like literally the neighborhood that your faith community's in, to knock on people's doors. And again, there's going to be a script, but essentially just really ask them like, hey, did you know there's an election coming up? What issues or what issue is most important to you as you think about voting? And really just have a conversation about that. Again, maybe they say gun violence, maybe they say climate change, maybe they say something totally different, but make sure to just connect that to voting. Like, oh, you really care about your kids feeling safe at school? It's going to be really important to vote this election because there's people who can make decisions about that. And then, literally at the door, help them register to vote or, check their registration, all of that. And beyond that, it's really connecting with your community. You can let them know like, hey, I'm a member of this congregation down the street. And hopefully now they have a positive, experience and memory of your community. So again, where could this happen? Literally everywhere, but we really recommend the neighborhood near your congregation. And I'm checking the chat in a moment, but just again, anytime before election day is awesome. And probably sometime on the weekend, because 3 to 4 hours is really ideal. So there's time, for training, for people to feel really comfortable and ready to go, time for people to come back, maybe even, have dinner or something as they debrief. One thing though to keep in mind, since a lot of people are kind of busy during the summer, maybe more people will be available in the fall as we get closer to the election. So I'm going to check Diane's message in the chat. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, that's so brilliant, Diane. Thank you. This year is a redistricting year. Every 10 years, we take a census and our district lines change. So even checking in with people, making sure they know, hey, actually, you're not in that district anymore. Do you want to check your registration? They might say, oh, I know who I'm voting for, but it might be a completely different person. So we'll make sure to add that to our script. Thank you, Diane. And I'll just say, I've done a lot of door knocking. It can be really scary, but I will say, compared to working for a candidate or for a political party, here we're literally not trying to get them to vote for anyone. We just want them to vote. And we want to make sure they know how to, and they have the resources to make sure they can. So this is a really cool and kind of low stress opportunity, I guess. And of course, not everyone's going to want to answer the door. That's normal. But even talking to 1 or 2 or 3 people, having a meaningful conversation and connection is incredibly powerful because they might not hear from anyone else. Okay, so any questions about door knocking? Awesome. And I'll say, you know, one thing that I think is really great is all of these things are repeatable. Say you table once at a farmer's market and you were like, wow, that was really fun. You can do it again, right? Or maybe you go to a different farmer's market, or you go to a different high school, or maybe you door knock and it was really powerful and you say, hey, we're connected to another congregation that's, I don't know, in Duluth. How about we go help them do a door knock in their neighborhood? Or maybe they don't have enough people, so we'll door knock with them. I guess I would say, though, one thing that we've been thinking about is it probably isn't a good idea to go maybe to a neighborhood where you're not connected because you don't maybe know the people as well. And we don't really want to like jump into other people's communities, if that makes sense. Okay, so the last one is, oh, yes, Nancy, what about flyering? Oh, yes. Okay, so going back here, super good point. You'll have all the materials that you need if you want to do any of these events. And one of the things with door knocking is you will have handouts. So whether you talk to a person or you don't, you'll leave a little flyer at the door, and it's just going to have really basic, like, hey, there's an important election coming up. You know, this little code is where you can go and check, make sure you're registered to vote. So whether you talk to them or not, at least they'll get that piece of paper. And if you do talk to them, you can leave it with them and maybe they can go check their registration right now. Yeah, and Pennsylvania actually lost 2, wow, congressional positions. That is too bad. Minnesota did not. But yes, thank you, Nancy. So the final one is something that maybe you feel a little more comfortable with. And all of these are really great options for different contexts. So not everything's a good fit for everyone, just want to say. But this one is talking with people you know. So what would that be? Joining a virtual, what we call relational organizing training that we host. We're going to have at least one this summer and one this fall. But also, if you want to maybe have us come to your faith community and you recruit people, we can do a custom training as well. But essentially, we'll learn about the power of relational organizing, literally just talking to people you know who trust you. Because again, as a trusted messenger, you are the most powerful influence to get people in your life to vote. Like, think about it. If someone knocks on your door, you don't know them, maybe you have a nice conversation, but maybe you're like, no, I don't talk to strangers. I'm busy. I don't really care what they have to say. Totally fine. But say your best friend says, hey, I know that you're really frustrated with the state of the world, or you don't think voting matters, but I really think it does, and it's worth the time. You're probably more likely to listen to your best friend, right? So after you go to this training, you're going to make a plan and actually think through 10 or more people in your life, hopefully new or infrequent voters you know, or people who maybe need a reminder voting, or people in your faith community, whatever. And literally before the election, you're going to talk to them. And that's it. And again, these trainings will be on Zoom, or you can have a custom training in person or on Zoom. Just kind of depends on the level of kind of safety that the staff member doing the training feels. Some might require masks or want to do it outside. And again, you can do this literally anytime before Election Day. And it's just a really, really powerful, maybe kind of lower stress option, especially if your congregation's never done anything about elections. Maybe this is a good option. I will say, someone mentioned, getting, like, if you're a pastor, I think someone said they're going to be preaching at their congregation and mentioning voting. That's relational organizing, right? Like, as a clergy member, you are a trusted messenger for your congregation. So maybe what you want to do is talk to your clergy member before November and say, hey, can we have a sermon focused on voting, and have that conversation with them. So I'll pause there. Curious if there's any questions about talking with people you know. I know it seems pretty obvious, but okay, awesome. And I know that at least I believe the vote. I think what they're doing, and it seems pretty similar to this, is really brilliant. They are going to be having teams actually call through their congregation's directory and literally call through everyone in the directory and say like, hey, it's blank from, church or the congregation. Do you know that there's an important election coming up? Oh, great. Like, do you have everything you need to vote? And maybe you're not best friends with everyone in your congregation, but maybe they're more likely to talk to you than a stranger. So that's another way that you could do relational organizing. And I will say our best tool that we have, it's a huge gift, is mnvotes.org. I'm just going to show it to you really fast, but all of our conversations, we're trying to get people to go to this website, because once they're here, they can do literally everything. I'll show you right now, mnvotes.org. And that's what this QR code is as well. People can use their cell phones, they can scan it and do that. But here you can register to vote, you can check your registration, you can find out where you vote, you can request a vote by mail ballot, you can also see who's on your ballot. Literally everything is here. And at the bottom of the page, there's some, call this number if you have questions or anything like that. So we just really want to get people here and that will kind of do our job for us. And yeah, Robert said, Southwest Pennsylvania, ELCA Lutherans wouldn't do that. Robert, do you want to come off mute and kind of explain which one you're talking about? And yeah, I will say this is not for everybody. Some congregations, these are just ideas. So you have to think about your own context.
Basically, ELCA Lutherans in my neck of the woods don't talk about politics, period, within the church body.
Well, that's a really good thing. I'm going to stop sharing there. I'm just curious if anyone has any similar experiences or any response to that. I'll just say I feel pretty lucky. My church, again, we don't talk about who to vote for, but saying voting is a really important way to live out your values, make sure you're registered to vote. And that's kind of it, but curious if other people have experiences. Yeah, Bob.
I think, if it's a straight, kind of GOTV, get out the vote thing, it's a patriotic thing, or vote your values, I wouldn't see a lot of objection for that. I think maybe the objections might come if it's like, we are, coming from a climate change perspective, we think you should be thinking about these issues. That's a different sort of step for a number of congregations. So from your experience, especially working for MNIPL, what sort of approach is it? Is it like totally generic, or is it like, we're coming from affiliation with MNIPL and, you should be thinking about climate. We hope you think about climate change when you go to the voting booth, but whatever you do is fine. How would you approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for us, we're trying to make this so that every context it can work in. So some congregations I've spoken to already, they're like, people will not want to say anything about any issues. So climate change, anything. And so again, that's why we're trying to make this really, it is kind of generic, but again, hopefully it allows for connection on values. Like, again, if I just go to your door and I'm saying like, hey, I'm a volunteer. Again, you can either say, and this will be part of the script, but you can either say, we decide this before people go and door knock or go table, but I'm a volunteer with MNIPL. We're a group of, faith communities working on climate. Or you could say, I'm a member of First Covenant Church down the block. So either way, and people kind of need to decide ahead of time. And then just saying like, hey, we're just walking around and making sure people know that there's an important election coming up. Like, are you, planning on voting? Again, we haven't made the script fully, but the goal is really to start out, instead of saying, we really want people to vote on climate. What do you think about climate? And then go into voting. It's really like, we think it's really important for people to vote this election. Are there any issues that are really important to you when you think about voting? And people might say whatever they want, and again, in the script and the training, we'll kind of help people, get skills on how to navigate those conversations. Because sometimes someone might say something that you're like, whoa, I don't know what to say. Like, they're saying something that for you is not a top value, but since we're nonpartisan, how to hopefully connect with them still, or say, oh, well, for me, when I think about voting, I'm really concerned about climate change or schools being fully funded or whatever you want to say. It's just a chance to connect with people, not really to like change their minds on whatever issue they want, but again, to share where you're coming from a little bit, and then to say, well, hey, if you care about, again, schools being fully funded, it's super important to vote this election because there's a lot of people who are going to make decisions on that. And then you can go into, hey, here's this handout, have you checked your registration, blah, blah, blah. So that for us, there are definitely groups that are going to be going in, with candidates in mind or with specific issues in mind. And that's awesome. We're trying to make this a little bit more just kind of a chance to meet our communities where they're at and connect voting to that, because we think the more people who vote, whatever issues they care about, the better it is for everybody. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. But, if you really want to go in and you feel ready to like ask them what they care about, and you want to talk about climate change, for example, and why it matters to you, like go for it, as long as it's respectful and welcoming. But that's not what we're kind of going in with the purpose of, I guess. And I see Mike's comment. Yeah, your state Senate district had a vote difference of 35 points. I know in St. Cloud, I think in their state Senate race, I think the difference was 17 points. Maybe correct me if you're wrong. I'm not seeing anyone nodding, but I know it's just like the tiniest margin, and actually someone flipped a seat. So there you go. So I'll go back to screen sharing, but thanks so much everybody for popping in. So really your invitation is to think about this. I mean, we've got a lot of time until November, right? And a lot of congregations or people are just starting to think about the election, but really reflect on these outreach opportunities. Which one or more than one maybe, or maybe none of them make sense for your community. Maybe listening to all of this, you're like, no, I don't really want to do any of that, but I want to do this other thing. And I'm really excited to do that. That's super amazing. And then what we encourage you to do is sign up for, again, one or more of these opportunities with this form. I'm going to put this in the chat, and you'll also get it tomorrow in a follow-up. And then once you've kind of let us know, like, hey, I think I want to do tabling. I want to go somewhere in our community and just show up, maybe outside our grocery store. We will follow up with a toolkit, with resources, with staff support. We will help you to make sure that happens successfully before November, and then take action, right? That's the whole point. And right now, I think this form, which I'll just show really quick, it's very short. We tried to make it as quick as possible. It shows, oh, actually, I think I should get rid of this one. Anyway, you can just fill this without, but yes, maybe, or no, are you interested in doing some kind of event? And then which voter outreach opportunity are you interested in? You can check more than one. And then is there anything else we'd like to know? Of course, if you want to let us know, for example, like, oh, I don't really want to do any of these things, but I want to do something else, fill in the blank here, let us know. So that's how that works. And then I'm not going to actually give time to fill that out now, since you can fill that out later tonight or tomorrow, and we'll be sharing this as we go. But just so you know, like, say you really want to do a tabling event. What are the action steps, right? What do you do next? Well, first, you want to get your team involved, or even a friend. I mean, if you're not part of a green team or a justice team or anything, even just doing it with one other person is going to make it more rewarding. And then you want to decide, like, who do you want to reach, right? And how do you want to reach them? And we'll kind of go into this in a moment. Confirm your plans with MNIPL so we can help you. and then start to prepare for your action. So, get the materials, recruit volunteers, look at our toolkit, and then of course, take action. You want to debrief after, tell us how it went. And maybe you want to do another event, right? Maybe it was a smashing success and you're like, wow, let's do this every week until the election. That would be awesome. But first, what are your goals, right? Like, for example, I think I skipped. Oh yeah, sorry. So who do you want to reach? Again, if you want to reach like new people, new voters that you don't know, you should do one of these things, right? You should do tabling or you should do door knocking. Or do you want to reach people in your faith community or people you know? You should go to a relational organizing training to learn how to have really powerful conversations with them. And then you just want to think about like, what are your goals? And as you know, hopefully with our work, we really believe in setting goals, not so that, if you don't reach them, you feel terrible. It's more of, so you have something to kind of reach for, like, hey, I want to try to get 3 volunteers at my tabling event. And I want to talk with 10 people throughout the day, and I want to register like 1. And I will say, keep your expectations in check, right? Like we have 80% of people voted in 2020 who can vote. So we've got a lot of people registered, but not everyone, right? And even again, just reminding them that the election's coming up, it's important. That can be really critical too. So for me, registrations are important, but they're not the most important thing, if that makes sense. And then, of course, you just want to prepare for your action, right? When you recruit volunteers, you want to make a clear ask. You want to make it clear, when's this happening? Why does this matter? All of that. Where are we meeting? Oh, we're going to meet, in our congregation after, worship or whatever. And you want to start inviting people at least 2 weeks before you want your event to happen, right? So there's time to let people know. And then the important thing to know about materials. So, if we go all the way back, here we are, right? A lovely tabling event. That's a lot of materials, right? And you might think, where do I get those kind of things? We will not have, a banner for you and flags. If you want to get your own materials for those things, you can, but we will have, voter registration stuff, scripts. We'll have little signs you can put up. We'll have things for door knocking and tabling. So to get them, there are 3 things you can do. You can come to our office. We're going to have them available for people to pick up throughout the summer and fall. You might just need to check with us to make sure someone's there to let you in. You can also just print them yourself, or you can arrange for us to mail the materials to you. But of course, then you need to, make sure you leave time for stuff to come in the mail so it doesn't, come too late. And so some just final tips as you're thinking about this. I would say practice what you preach. Make sure your registration is up to date. I would assume everyone here is registered, but again, maybe you moved, maybe you changed your name. And remember, registering voters, talking to voters, it's about democracy. It's a chance to come together, build bridges. It's not about candidates or parties. And again, just have fun, but really take it seriously because this is a super critical thing that we're doing. And explore the toolkits and ask us for help. Yes, Jackie, great question. We're located on Lake Street in Minneapolis. So especially folks who are, not in the Twin Cities and can't make it there, or if you're really busy and you can't come and pick stuff up, that's where printing stuff or having us mail stuff to you will be better. And I don't want to preemptively promise too much, but I'm saying, so you can hold me to it, that if you do need to print materials, we can also give folks kind of small Office Depot gift cards or things like that to kind of cover the cost, because we know, some people, some congregations really can't print those extra materials. So I'm just kind of curious, as you've kind of thought about these ideas, what activities can you envision your congregation or your community doing? So just kind of curious if people have any thoughts. And maybe your thoughts are, all of these sound scary and I don't want to do them. And that's totally fine. I will say it can feel a little scary. Hopefully, the scary can also be an opportunity of, hey, this could be a really cool thing for our community to do together. Or, hey, if I build up the courage, this is something I think we could do in September. Artists, awesome. We're going to go to the farmer's market. Yay. Tabling both at, thank you, Judy. That's a really good point. You can table in your own congregation, right? There's probably a lot of people there who need the reminder or, need to check their registration. So I love that. And then at an event you're going to do in the fall. Any other thoughts? I'll keep checking the chat. Oh, tabling at a senior community. That is super smart. I love it. Well, I will keep going. Oh, I see someone else put in the chat. Special organizations do political action. I do it there. Yeah, totally. And I think, Robert, too, it sounds like really in the context you're in, this might not be a good fit for, again, your faith community. But again, maybe just you as an individual, right? Thinking like, okay, what power do I have to talk to people in my life? Not in the context of my church or my congregation or whatever, just with people in my life. Maybe my nephew, just turned 18, or I know my neighbor, just moved or something, and I want to make sure they know to vote. Tabling might work in my church or condo complex. That's awesome. Okay, it seems like tabling is catching on. That's super great. And again, just keep them rolling in, but I'm gonna finish up here so we can get out a little bit early, which is always fun. But I just want to say, thank you so much. I mean, we are in the very beginning of June. We're in a time when there's so much going on. There's so much fear about the future. There's so much worry about the election, the future, what's going on. And so I just want to thank everybody for thinking about how you can put your faith in action this year in really, again, one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes. And I will say one last thing, Carolyn, see if MN Votes has handouts to put in the bulletin. So smart. Yes. So as you can see, I will just put these things back. You can take these ideas and put them in infinite ways, right? Relational organizing maybe is just, hey, I'm going to put something in the blurb of our bulletin every week until November, and it's going to remind people to vote, and maybe we're going to talk about it during worship. Like that is really powerful. So I'm going to stop screen sharing there and just want to say thanks so much, everybody, for joining. And again, you'll get all these materials in a follow-up email. So more to come. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks for all you do, Carissa.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. And I love your idea about the senior community.
Good night.
Yep. Bye, everybody.